I kind of did a monologue the other day when I was working with Ken on the keynote speaker side there. And I think everybody has a songs in their minds that does different things for them. So I'm going to touch on that really quickly again. Music means so much to different people, and an artist or a song or something like that might touch you in different ways. And I know Ken was nodding when I said that last time. Basically, it means so much to some people. It can make you happy, sad, remember people, things like that. So a lot of times we don't remember, or we don't know, for instance, that there's people behind that to help create and capture that sound or capture that artist properly to be presented to wherever you hear it and how you hear it now. So we have 7 of the best that I love, everybody's music that's on here and everybody's work and projects that's on this panel today. 7 of the awesomest producers that I've ever met and ever seen their work. And I'm going to go around the room really quickly. I'm going to start with you, Ken. Who had you on there the other night, whoever was there that's here today, thanks for joining us the other night with Ken, with the keynote speaker. Ken, you worked with Joni Mitchell live, of course, Fleetwood Mac, your daughter, Kobe Coulee, absolutely awesome. And of course, now you're the owner of the Sausalito record plant, which we're all happy to hear about that.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
We're looking for a new name.
Are you?
I think I told you that.
Yeah.
Yep. So we can't use the name record plant.
No.
No.
Bummer.
Yeah, I know. We used to call the record plant, then it called the plant, and neither owner will let us use it without big bucks.
Right.
So.
Of course, that makes sense.
Well, so the numbers on the side of the building say 2200.
Yeah.
And it's an iconic set of numbers. So 2200 Bridgeway, I guess, is where we're going.
You will never be able to change the MapQuest on that, though, because it'll always come up Sausalito record plant. So
sure.
Doesn't matter what.
And you know, it's interesting that the guys who own those names, I'm the only customer they have to sell it to me. They should have cut me a deal.
Right.
Because as soon as we call it something else, they're going to go, whatever you were asking is worthless.
Right.
So,
nice.
Anyway.
I'm going to keep going around the room. So Darius Saponiak, good friend of mine. Absolutely awesome to have you back again for the 2nd year.
Thank you.
Worked with Big Sugar, Holly Cole, Wide Mouth Mason, Snow, you name it. You've done a lot in the rap scene too, which has been pretty cool.
Yep.
Thank you very much. You're working out of Toronto, Phase 1 Studios, among other studios.
Yep.
Joining us again.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Bob Marlette. This is a champion to have come from the United States too. I was looking forward to having you up here, like Ken. You've worked with Airborne, one of my favorite albums ever, Running Wild. Black Sabbath, Rob Zombie, Quiet Riot, and you can probably say some members of Journey even throughout there, and different things that you've been asked to do too. So thank you for joining us. And
my pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you for all those.
I'm definitely bummed that I'm not there. I was looking forward to actually going to London.
Nice.
Oh, and Canada, London, Canada. So
when
you first said, "Oh, dude, we're going to London," I'm like, "I love London," you know. Sorry.
So
I think I'm funny, but not everybody does.
Heard about
I think you're funny.
In London, Ontario, down in LA, though, did you not? You heard about all the great things?
I did, absolutely.
But it wasn't Ontario. You didn't understand what Ontario was. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Karen joining us, and you still got you got the same color hair as you do in that photo. Is that part of the? Is that the Karen Kozowski that we all recognize? Then
I don't know what's under here anymore.
Fantastic. I've never actually met you in person, but I've heard so many great things about you. Besides being a producer with Brett Kissel and Washboard Union and Tim Hicks, you also songwrite with them. These songs that they're putting out that are winning big awards and they're traveling around, you are a co-writer with a lot of those.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks. And of Haviah Mighty too. And it's awesome. Are you in Toronto right now?
Brampton.
You're in Brampton? Cool. Awesome to see you. I'm a big fan of the song Champion. It's awesome. I was playing NHL 20 this morning,
Oh, sweet. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's so cool. That's something I want to touch on later on. Is basically where music is going now, and you got stuff in a game. So I mean, that's pretty cool. So obviously, 15 years of age, you started producing yourself, put your own little tape out at that point called No Studio.
Mm-hmm.
It was all up from there. And now you've been working with people from Tribe Called Red and sitting in with production and that stuff. You got a lot of great history going on there already at a young age. So it's pretty cool to see that. So thank you very much for being part of this with us.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
And Eric, how are you doing over there?
Great.
Up in North York?
No, in Roncesvalles in Toronto.
Nice, nice. Thank you very much for being here. Obviously, you're behind Hemi Vision with Big Sugar, which was one of my favorite albums ever. That monster bass and that song, man, digging a hole. I mean, all that stuff, it's things that's gone, probably you've been told that a million times, so I won't keep stroking your ego on that one.
Go ahead, stroke my ego all you want. It's fine.
25th anniversary for that one.
Yeah, no doubt, eh? Oh,
Yeah.
God, just rest in peace to, I can't remember his name.
Gary Lowe.
Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah, Gary Lowe.
Bare Naked Ladies, you were working with the Bare Naked Ladies, I think yesterday. You worked with the Tea Party. You got a Grammy with Enrique Iglesias. I mean, wow. There's a few Grammys in the room, I think, obviously. And of course the Arkells, and that you're known well for now. And I was at the Junos and I saw you were sitting with us, or near us, and Monster Truck, of course. Yep. Congratulations, all that. Thanks for being part.
Thank you.
And
great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Jeff, how you doing?
Oh, your mic's off.
Turn your mic on. He is a sound man, right? He is in production. Do we have any engineers in the room that can help us out with this?
That's always the most embarrassing thing when
Can't hear a damn word you're saying, Jeff.
Still not there.
Nope, still not there.
Can you hear me now? Nope.
Here now.
Nope.
Well, as you fix that, I'll just introduce you. You used to be the in-house producer of Sony, of course, so you did many things. You were a part of a lot of things that we recognize, obviously, from Thornley and working with Jim Cuddy from Blue Rodeo, Swollen Members. And of course, we have to give a shout out to Aaron Allen, who's from our area here, Country Artist of the Year for the Forest City London Music Awards too. So great work with Aaron Allen on that stuff, by the way. And that's our room right now. We have a great room, and I'm looking forward to the next 3 hours. Was that what we said? 3 hours?
Yeah.
Everybody feels ready and their snacks and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Are we writing a
Is there
song
going to
here?
be a nap time in this 3 hour? Because I'm probably going to need a nap at some point. So.
I didn't check your rider, but I mean it's
Yeah,
somewhere.
right. It's in there somewhere.
Jeff, I don't know how Jeff's doing over there, but you can chime in whenever you are. Just kind of give us a thumbs up. So yeah, everybody that's in the crowd, thank you very much for tuning in. This is where we're going to do it right now during this COVID time. So we're not going to talk about COVID anymore. But this is how we're doing it. Usually we have a great setup here in London where everybody can see and meet these people and have a great time. But here we are. Questions and answers are available at the bottom. If anybody has any questions at all for any of our panelists, please pipe up. We will go through sections of different things and get to know everybody, and also talk about some of the projects that they've been involved with. So
is this better now?
There you go.
I just
Welcome back, Jeff.
I had to relaunch it for some reason. I don't know. Just wasn't working. So now it worked. Hi.
Hola.
Hola.
Good to have you back, Jeff.
Thanks. It's good to be back.
Okay, so we have a couple questions here. To start off with, I did send you guys out some questions, just topics that we will go on about, but I'll start off with, I think, Eric. And what was your first recording project, and what was the method of recording?
Man, my first recording project. I think it was my own band, and I think we did a live off the floor, except for me, because I was behind the console. So we did it sort of live off the floor, but that was it. And it turned out okay, I guess. But I realized quickly that I was better on this side of the glass. So, and I won't say the name of the band.
So what did you use for recording back then?
Neve console, oddly enough. It was literally my first recording I ever did, and I was a intern at Phase One, and I just went in and recorded my own band on downtime. That was the whole purpose of getting the job there, was to record a free record for my band, so we could go out and tour the world. You know, it didn't really work out that well, but I had to settle for my plan B,
Right.
which was producing records. So,
Not a bad plan B, Bo.
Mhm.
That was the big Phase One, where obviously there was many albums come out. You saw a lot, obviously, as an intern, you would have saw a lot of great stuff back then. Probably Red Rider and different things.
No, that was a bit before my time, but you know, I did get to work with some really great engineers and producers and in bands and stuff that I assisted on, which was great. And then eventually worked my way up to chief engineer, which was also great. So got to do some other projects and stuff. So.
Now that you had a microphone there, Jeff,
Yes.
your first project, and what were you using back then?
That's so long time ago. I can't even remember. I'd always been screwing around with a lot of stuff. I had if everybody on this panel should know what it is, but most people won't know. I had a Fairlight in my house when I was 13.
Really?
Oh,
So
Come on.
I had access to some stuff that I really didn't have a clue at the time, but I've been making music like computers were like, it looked like something out of Weird Science with the cables coming out of it. And so, but that was because my father was into the industry, that kind of stuff. So the tools were just laying around. I would just fuck around with it. And I just learned how to do stuff. And then of course I was in bands. And so I can even do Ratsy way back when we were like 5 almost. It feels like now. Phase One, who made records there and stuff. So there's no real, I can't really pinpoint it because it was a lot of electronic, a lot of it was analog, even before most people were doing that. So I don't even remember what the first thing I did was. Just like first real professional recording would probably be at Phase One, and Ratsy was probably on it or there at the same time. So it's so long time ago, I'm not quite sure. It's all a blur. So
Just for the record, everyone, Jeff has dropped the first F-bomb of the whole segment today. So we talked about
there
that.
will be many. Sorry.
Ding.
Just like the other day. Thanks, Jeff, for that. And Haviah, I'm going to ask. So, I mean, obviously, the youngest probably in the whole crowd right now. You were doing stuff for yourself back then. What was the first project that you worked on? I know you were working with your brother and different things.
Yeah, I mean, back then he was too young to work with him. I've done a lot of like recording, like very basic recording compared to what everybody else on the panel is probably doing. But my first actual release was the project that you mentioned, No Studio, when I was 17. But even at that time, it was extremely limited in terms of resources and stuff like that. So it was like really basic, like condenser microphones, very, very basic setup.
Right. What about you, Karen? First project? And what were you using?
Well, I used to do, I had this top floor of a house in Winnipeg that I lived in. It was my grandmother's house, and she was renting me the top floor apartment. And I was recording on a PC using Sonic Foundry Vegas and SoundForge and Fruity Loops and renting mics from Long and McQuaid and, you know, just setting up in the bedroom and in the kitchen. And I think there was an ADAT at one point, but I don't remember what I did with it. And yeah, just like a Dr. Beat drum or Dr. Rhythm drum machine, you know, just like really getting into just trying to put songs together and make sounds and make records that way. So I kind of started out doing it that way and then progressed into like using Max and Logic and stuff after that. But that was my first kind of start at getting kind of hands-on, do it yourself. Let's just make some.
And who did you record?
Myself.
Oh, it was just for you. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. This was back when I thought I was an artist, and that's what I was going to do. And I mean, it was kind of like, you know, when you're in your teens too, which is when I started writing songs. all I could see were artists that were out there singing and performing their own music. You know, especially in the 90s, it was very focused. The artists that I followed were all artists that wrote for themselves. So I saw that example and didn't realize that you could be someone who could write or produce for someone else at that time. So I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to go out and start playing these songs. But then when I finally realized that what I loved was the behind the scenes recording and writing, then everything clicked for me.
Right. Awesome. So, Bob, I'm going to throw that up to you now.
I was just sitting here thinking about, actually the first sort of record I made was 1972. It was I grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it was the local hotshot band. And I was just a little kid, sort of, well, I wasn't that little, but they asked me to play keyboards on it. And it was on a Revox 2-track. And that was, you know, that's how we did it back then, you know. And the one thing that I was just thinking about, well, everybody was going around, is like how the progression of the evolution of recording, how, you know, when we had a 2-track and then the first time we got a 4-track, we were like, what are we going to do with those other 2 tracks, you know? And then you get an 8-track and it's like, wow, this is insane. Look at all these tracks, you know? And now, you know, with Pro Tools Ultimate, I'm running sessions that are like 160 tracks. It's like so crazy. But yeah, it was around 1972 in that era. And then, but I didn't sort of make my first sort of, you know, big time record until working with Al Stewart back in the late 70s, early 80s. And that was, so that would have been my first like real, you know, big record. But I had a lot of fun back in the day. But that was the excitement of back in the day. It's like, you know, it's like, how do you do that? I don't know. Let's see what happens. Like, let's just push buttons until it starts sounding cool, you know? And I love that, you know. That's one of the things I'm so blessed with in my career, that I started so far back, that it was like being able to see the entire curve of everything is pretty cool. So
Awesome. Thank you very much. Ken, obviously, what was the first, I know this is probably going to be the most unique, I guess, when it comes to where things were at back then, a little bit even further back than Bob, but I mean.
No, I started in 71 at Hyder's, and I got a job being a second engineer or actually tape op, you know.
Right.
I like everybody else, I thought I was going to be I was a singer-songwriter, and I thought I was going to record myself and you know, live happily ever after. But I did my first session was with Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Wow.
And I suddenly realized that I was shit, you know, as a songwriter. But I loved all those knobs. I just loved all those knobs. So I couldn't wait to turn them. In fact, to show how stupid I was, I didn't have anything to patch. One day I went into the studio. And I didn't have anything to make noise and record with. And so I knew what the oscillator was. So I plugged the oscillator into a fader and turned it up, and I turned it up to 10K, and I turned it, I couldn't hear anything. So I cranked the monitors full blast, and still didn't hear anything. So I left with my tail between my legs, and next thing I heard, somebody said, "Hey, the tweeters are all blown in Studio A." So I had blown out all the speakers. Yeah, that's me. That's my start.
Awesome. It's amazing. That's awesome. That's great.
did you ever get to work with Bones Howe back in the day?
Oh yeah, I lived with him.
Oh no, because that's my ex-father-in-law is Bones Howe.
Really?
Yeah, I married Erica back in the day. Yeah.
He's great.
Oh, he was so epic back in the day.
he had he was so cool. He had his sweater kind of tied around his neck, you know, all hanging over his shoulders. He had a Mercedes he drove. And he was like Mr. GQ. But I sat behind him for about at least a year. I did Fifth Dimension. I did Sergio Mendes with him.
Right.
He always and I was in the mode where I was going to copy everybody. Whatever they did, I'm going to write it down, and that's part of my repertoire.
Sure.
So he had these Pultecs and Lang, and they were put in for him. So he had 24 Pultecs for each channel, so he could roll. So he would roll off everything arbitrarily, just walk in the room, 70 hertz, everything rolled off. I said, well, why'd you do that, Bones? Because sometimes you might want to have some, you know, some bottom end. He says, I was at a party one time, and I got embarrassed so bad because somebody played something and my bottom end got away. So
that's one of the biggest lessons, you know, that you learn is by those huge mistakes. It's
right.
Like, whoops, never do that again.
Right.
Crazy.
Down to Darius.
Hey. Yeah, so I guess I kind of come from the old, I remember being young and stupid and super long hair, and we were going to make it. We were going to get signed. And my first recording was, you know, I started as an amateur guy, like, you know, a hack. And we rented, we borrowed actually, one of my guitar players, it's good friends with Jag, and we borrowed he had this Akai 16 channel recorder that recorded to a VHS cassette or something like that. I don't even remember, but this thing was a monster. It took us two people to carry this into our rehearsal space. Really old friend, Dan Baumgartner, rented us or lent us a whole bunch of microphones because he was a live sound guy. And we set up in a rehearsal space and we recorded our record. And made a demo. But that was the first time I ever actually turned knobs on something, and actually was kind of cool. Fell in love with the whole process, right?
Right.
First professional recorded, again, I was the artist, and Brad Rogers, we went to his studio. If you guys know him, he recorded our bands, and he was funny. Working with him was kind of like, I remember being in the band going, I want to be like this guy. My knuckleheads are stupid. And what he's doing is way more fun than what we're doing, you know? Like everybody's out getting high and parading girls through the studio, and it's just your typical gong show of a rock stardom. And it's kind of like, this is more fun. So I sat next to him learning how to do this. Fast forward a few more years, and I guess my first real pro recording was after assisting Eric for some years. Thank you again for everything you taught me, my friend.
You did it all for you. You did it all, man. I didn't do anything, so.
Yeah, humble as always. Bless. My first pro recording would be at Phase One. I grew up a lot of years assisting, and then I would say my best memory was, Eric, after you left Phase One to move on, was with Gordy, and we did the Brothers and Sisters record together, and that was a lot of fun because Eric, as you can attest to, Gordy is a mad scientist in that room. Yeah. And it allowed me to push all kinds of buttons. Like he was the ultimate guy to give permission, just like, go have fun, right? No rules in the playground. Other than, what was that? When was it heated? No EQ sign, Eric?
Yeah. Well, there's stories about that. I won't get into it right now, but
fair enough. No, I hear you.
All I'll say is on a 1073 or a 1084, if you push the EQ knob down and gently pull the EQ knob back up, it looks like it's actually not engaged.
The wizard. Yeah. So so I guess my transition into recording was multi-phased, and yeah, I remember falling in love with recording back at the age of, like, I guess I was 16. And then by the time I was 20 something, I was in it nose deep.
Thank you for that. And if anybody has any questions for any of the panelists, please go nuts there on the questions. Q&A on the bottom of your screen, you'll see. We do have a question for Mario, and I'm going to let you answer this, Darius. Tongue in cheek, of course, but would you say most producers, engineers want to be rock stars?
Really? Okay, so yeah, I wanted to be a rock star. Are you kidding me? You want me to pull up pictures of me with the big mane of hair? I looked like I was straight out of a Poison video, or it was, we all wanted to be rock stars. And even I remember when I first started recording, I didn't let go of that. Even though part of me said, screw this, it was like, nah, that's not something you wanted to let go of. Something I would have, like Eric making a record for, being in a studio to make a record for his band. That was kind of like, that's the thing.
Right.
Yeah. Right now, do I consider myself a rock star? No.
What for you, Jeff? What do you think about that question?
Yeah, I mean, I think pretty much everybody on this panel is going to be the same. We started out thinking or hoping. I was in a band and we did sign a record deal and with CBS Records, and then shortly after, actually Garth Richardson, hometown boy, London, produced that record, and I up that phase, and during that, Sony bought CBS and kind of turfed everybody, and it was kind of like, at the time, I was like, nah, fuck. But now
Choose dollar in the jar, Jeff. Dollar in the jar, please.
I thankful that happened, that the entire roster of CBS was pretty much dropped. They changed everybody. Our record didn't come out. In hindsight, that's good, because then I ended up doing more film stuff anyways, and I wouldn't be doing this now if I had been a rock star or had the chance.
Right.
I still, it's the lifestyle. I get to still play on things. I still get, and now I think in hindsight, I really wasn't looking for accolades to be a musician. I just wanted to go up that first gig and you play and you go, I have to do that forever, like somehow.
Yeah.
That you get bitten by that bug and you go, it's amazing. And so I still get that working on projects, either playing or being part of it. And it's not like I want the hand claps or the accolades at all. It's just, I get to make music. And I think that's still fine. I think that's probably why I wanted to be a rock star, to make music. So, but that's just my answer.
So we'll start on a separate segment here, because I want to get Ken involved in this one here too. So I'm going to try to get everybody's input as I know you in different ways. Jeff, you're very vocal on a lot of things, especially, but I want Ken to start this one. But it's based off of what you were talking about the other day, the difference between an engineer and a producer, and where that goes, and where the artists that are approaching you, especially nowadays, can basically, you hit it the other day, and I want, if you could repeat it again, difference between an engineer and a producer in a project.
Well, the engineer is the guy who's got the ears, he makes the sound, and the producer is the one who basically puts it somewhere. So my thing as an engineer, I just love getting sounds. And the band guys I worked with, my goal was to work with the best I could, like Lindsey Buckingham. You don't get better than that. So, but they would let me spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes on the guitar sound, and I would just get really crazy. And then, as a producer, then you got to figure out where's that gonna sit in the sound field.
Mm-hmm.
So, so it also takes a musician to know that, and an engineer might not know that you want to do a Nashville tuning on a guitar. But a producer does, so that you know what the song needs to move along. So, did I answer your question?
You sure did.
Okay.
Karen, I want you to touch on that though. Like the people that are coming at you, basically, Jeff has stated that it's people walk up to him and say, or call him up and say, "I want you to produce me," but they don't know. What do you think of something like that? Like they don't understand what they're asking.
Well, I mean, I think the world and the way recording is evolving now, there is a lot of blurring of lines, especially in my experience. As a producer, I'm also engineering everything in my studio. I'm also collaborating with the artists. There's a lot of crossover. I'm playing a lot of the instruments. I'm programming a lot of the stuff, especially now during pandemic times, but even before, if I use an outside musician, I don't always want to go into a large studio, and sometimes I'll send something over to them in their own home studio, and they'll be engineering for themselves. So things have changed a lot. There's still a place for just producing and just engineering, but you're seeing a lot of blending of things these days because records are being made so many different ways. So I feel like for me, what's working is to be as flexible as the project needs and try to do my best to give it what it needs, give the artist what they need, you know, step out of their way when they've got a great idea. And, you know, just hope that we make a great project at the end of the day.
Right. Jeff, you want to add to that? I know you started that conversation the other day.
Yeah, I'll just change the perspective of it. So what I meant was, and Karen's absolutely right. There's the blurring is existing because of the technology.
Right.
Absolutely. What I was getting at was potential clients coming to me, they don't seem to understand what a producer does versus an engineer.
Right.
That's what I meant. It's like, well, I'm halfway through the project and I realize they don't care about my production ideas. So really what they really wanted was a great engineer who can mix and help them take it to and I mentioned that I just put that article trying to just separate. It's like there's this producer that becomes your co-artist at that point.
Yeah.
And there's the ones that are just sort of kind of help nudge you a little bit. And then you don't want any collaboration. You just want it to sound great. And that's really what I meant was for the artists listening out there, be very clear what you want because the definition of producer and engineer has been blurred so much that maybe they're looking for an engineer, not a producer. Or opposite, they want a producer, not an engineer. So that's all I was getting at. It's not a negative thing. It's just, it was more like, it can save a lot of time and energy and money for artists out there. Just, I don't just take stuff and make it chart, making it sound good. I take the time to fix things that are broken and whatever. And if that's not something you're looking for, then you don't want a producer. You want a very good engineer and a good mixer to help you at least make your art sound the way you want it to sound. That's kind of what I meant. So
anybody with questions out there at all for anybody? Ken, you got a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. So what happens if you're producing and the artist comes up with a really lame idea? And then I find that a lot of times I have to discreetly and delicately say, yeah, that's not working because the timing issue is you're stepping on somebody else's toes. And I don't usually have the situation where people get in my face and so what do you know? But I just wondered if it seemed like it could be a real thing for a lot of people. You're battling against a guy. I remember I used to work with this guy. He was just an asshole. He just thought he knew everything. Literally, I mean, it was a fight. It made my life miserable.
I think we've all had those gigs for sure. And I mean, that's how most of us cut our teeth. Like there's always going to be this. Mm-hmm. And this is fine if both parties have agreed to be able to do this in a healthy way. And that's kind of really what I was getting at. So I've actually had to say, with singers, they're here sometimes. They're like, well, normally what I do, and then I have to go, well, how's that working out for you? Why are you here? I'm not trying, and I'll try to say that, I don't need to be right. I don't want to be right. I want the product to be right. So we're essentially, I'm always trying to keep it framed as like we're working together to make something awesome. We're not fighting each other. So, but I mean, there's always going to be that issue. But that's why I raised the point of, well, what's the difference between a producer and an engineer? And so a lot of people coming into situations, they don't really know what a producer does. They just think we just make shit sound good. And so I think that's something that we're all going to be probably running into more often than not in the next couple of years. So that's,
I think especially in a, you know, in contemporary times here, it's like we've had such a paradigm shift in what, you know, the terminology of everything. I mean, you know, my thing is I always describe it like this. My job as a producer is to facilitate everything and figure it out. You know, if I don't engineer it, then we have to find an engineer. If, you know, it's my responsibility ultimately as a producer to make all of the things fit together. So, and that even goes so far as to, you know, understand how to, you know, emotionally deal with the artist and their not such great ideas. You know, I mean, that is a big part of the job as a producer, is that, you know, emotionally being, you know, being able to, you know, negotiate how this gets done without hurting feelings, understanding how to, you know, one of my best tools has always been humor.
yeah.
You know, it's
I
like,
think we all do that. Yeah.
yeah, it's all about humor and being able to say, okay, yeah, it's like sometimes the ideas are just like, oh my God, you know, it's like, really? So, got to do what you got to do. So,
I think we all have Jedi mind tricks. You know, these are not the chords you're looking for.
oh yeah, yeah.
And you also got to look
also the
excited
artist
to
just-
want to try their ideas, right? So
Absolutely.
even though as crappy as the idea might be, you might know, like, yeah, this is not going to work. You have to be like, wow, what a great idea. Let's try that. It's
Yeah.
kind of your job to do it. You know, you're working for them. So, you know, you
That's
really have to bring their vision.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. And sometimes the artist needs to hear their idea and then hear a couple other options and realize how great the other option is. Because they just don't know until they hear it.
Very true.
I agree
No one
with
likes a
that.
studio bully. No one likes a studio bully, you know? It's,
Yeah.
I think it creates division during the session. It creates like sort of back talk and all kinds of negative things, man. I think you really need to, I agree with Bob. Like you know, you have to facilitate these things. If a guitar player wants to try something, you know, it's going to suck. You still try it, you know, and like Karen said, you know, maybe try another couple options and give them the choice of seeing that maybe their idea wasn't the greatest, but maybe it inspired something else good to happen. Right. So.
I agree. As I'd like to add to that, in the studio, I have a saying: we say no to nothing. I'm with Eric on this one, where it's kind of like, let them do their thing. You know, I'm in the room and I'm working for. Like, I think a lot of people forget that we're working for people. Yeah. Somebody's paying me, and you know, just like the way I pay a plumber to fix my plumbing in here. He's working for me. So if I need him to do an extra pipe here and there and so on and so forth, create a sprinkler in my living room, I'll pay him to do that. You might think that's a stupid idea, but he'll do it until I realize that I'm flooding my living room. And so our job, you know, as an engineer, is to facilitate creativity. And by saying no to something, it's kind of like you're being that, like Eric says so eloquently, that the control room bully, the studio bully. That's just not right.
I think it also matters how and when you work it in. Like, that's the psychology, that's the Jedi mind tricks, Jeff, where it's like, even, you know, if it's a vocalist and they're starting to do some takes and maybe they've got some bad habits, maybe they're approaching some things a little differently than I know I'm going to coach them to do, but I'd much rather that they sing down 2 or 3 takes their way, because they're not in their head, they're not overthinking it, and there may be some great musical accidental moments that come out of that, and then start to get them thinking about what they're doing and guiding them towards something that ultimately might be the much better choice. But I think it's really important for that creative moment, for the creativity to come out of someone, to let some of that out, so that they feel like they're in a safe space. They feel like they can be their most creative self. And then you might actually get that magical stuff happening that you're going to capture on tape. I
like the organic back and forth here, you guys. Everyone's doing really well. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to ask this question here, and hopefully we can get into a bit of an organic thing like that, where you guys can go back around. Basically, this is from Megan, which is a fantastic artist here in London. Have you ever gotten it wrong? Yes. Where they want something and you think it's so bad, but it turns out the way, are you right or are you wrong? Sorry about that. I know that happened with Michael Jackson on Thriller album and Billie Jean, where Michael wanted it a certain way and Quincy wanted it something else. Michael won the fight. He was right. His idea worked and the record was a hit. Now that's a really good example. Thank you very much, Megan, for that. That's a very good example. Quincy, how do you, as an artist, fight with a guy like Quincy, right? It's the same with, there's a long history there when it comes to what they're doing. So have you ever had it where it's wrong and you, Bob?
Yes. Actually, I was just thinking about one of the records that, and luckily I didn't have enough say on this record, but I played keyboards on Tracy Chapman's first record, the one with Fast Car, and it's so funny because I did not get that record. I didn't understand it. I was, it's like, and it was I remember thinking to myself, it's like, wow, this just isn't really gonna work. It's great. You can't deny how great it was, but in terms of the marketplace, it's like, wow, I don't see how this is really gonna work in the marketplace. And I was only off by 25 million copies. So you live, you learn. I mean, that's, it's funny because that's one of the things that, we were talking about, studio bullies and all this kind of stuff. One of the things that was very, very important for me, is to grow within myself and my own understanding, because when I was young, I got paid to be the idea guy. That was my job. As I walked in the session or whatever environment, it was like, what do you think? What do you think we should do here? It's like, oh, here, let's try this. And one of the most important things about being producer is to feel the entire room and all of everyone's ideas and be able to sift through it. But yes, I have been wrong, and on more than one occasion, but the key to that whole question, that's why this question is so important, is because it's about how we learn from being wrong, and it helps us evolve as both people and artists.
Right. Haviah, on the artist side, what was it like when you started to work with a producer and started getting into the real true side of becoming independent and getting into the studio? What was that like with what we're saying, being on the other side of that?
Yeah, my experience has been interesting because I do act as my own producer now. I think in the beginning, I had a lot of difficulty with recording in the studio because, interestingly enough, I felt like I wasn't getting enough input. I rap and I sing. And I felt like it was very difficult for me to feel comfortable in a space where I did a take and then the engineer was kind of like, okay, let's move forward. And if I felt like the take wasn't strong enough and there wasn't pushback from the engineer, then I feel uncomfortable with the entire session. I feel not confident in how it's going to turn out. And I had that issue a lot, which actually led to me engineering, or I guess recording my own vocals. And that's been something that I've done for the past few years. And I just feel extremely comfortable with kind of introducing what I think is necessary, the takes, tuning myself, and then passing the Pro Tool session off to somebody who can make that reference mix that I can't make sound great. I can't create the headroom that I need. I'm like incapable of those things. But when it comes to the production, I feel like it's really important that my ears are like a part of the entire process. So what's worked for me, especially with COVID, is just producing mostly for myself and then sending the session off to the engineer and sending a reference mix, a show mix, a clean mix, and notes. And then just also letting the engineer know that they have flexibility with production themselves. Like, I do have flexibility. I'm open to hearing ideas that you have, but this is the reference mix. This is where I kind of hope for the final record to go.
Right.
So I feel like I'm pretty flexible. I also have had, I've worked with people who are not as flexible as me. So like working with other producers, for example, and hoping that they'll send stems and we can kind of trade back and forth, and maybe them not being as confident in my abilities as an artist to be a part of that process. But if it's my song, like I have to be involved in that process. So I would love to work with engineers and producers that are comfortable with the fluid movement with an artist. Because I know a lot of artists, sometimes they don't have a part of all of that. They just maybe kind of want somebody else to help them with that. But I do like to have a lot of say. So it's more of a collaborative thing with all parties.
Right. And basically, did you want to say something, Ken, or you were just...
No, I agree. And, it's interesting that a lot of artists I work with, let's say vocals, they want you to be their springboard. They want to see your face when you're looking, you could have done better. And other people, they know what they want. They know what their limits are. And so you got to let them go and just kind of hold them in. But that's the thing about being a producer. You need to know which one you're working with. And if she wants something that doesn't want to input, we let it go. We set up the situation where she can soar and she can really create some beautiful stuff. Other women, other singers, they just need some pushback. Just to call them on their shit, so to speak. I think you could have done better on that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there to be said between the two of you there when it comes to molding and shaping an artist, or letting them be themselves, or guidance and things like that on different areas and positions. So anybody else want to touch on that at all?
I think I would just say it's difficult. I would imagine on the other side, it would be difficult to know unless the artist communicates what their comfort level is, how to navigate. I feel like that would be a difficult thing. I know for me, if I do go into a session, because I do record my own vocals a lot, but there are opportunities where I'm still in studio, I will usually let the person at the board know that I am comfortable, and actually would prefer that they give input, and just so that they feel comfortable, because I feel like it would be hard to read the room off jump, like knowing immediately how the artist works. So it would be good if other artists did do that and kind of communicate that, but it must be tough to have to figure that out.
Right.
It can be great when an artist does, let you know, but not everyone's confident enough to just come out and say that. So
Right.
It is a lot of just trying to read the room as fast as you can.
I would say, I just wanted to say that I think every job is different for me. And what I've learned because every job can be so different. Like, I come from, maybe not when it took 6 months to do a single, like the older guys in the panel and Eric, everybody, we know that's like, sometimes it took a lot longer than people assume today because of technology. It's like, well, are you done my single yet? I just fucking started 2 days ago. Relax. So there's that. Everybody wants it done quick. But
Dollar in the jar.
there you go. So what I've done to mitigate a lot of that is I want to slow the process down and take, like, so any artists I'm dealing with, we take the time, we speak to each other through music and what they love. And I really want them to get to understand that I'm not here to exact my will on you. I always want to make artists to be uniquely viable. And what I mean by that is they want to have success, and there are some mathematics involved in that. Mm-hmm. So if we can speak to each other through music and what you like and have that rapport, when we get to the recording stage, they already know that I'm not there to exact my will on them. We're there to try to do something, but there are certain things that I have to look at and do so it can garner as much success as it can, or then my brand fails. So so I've decided that no matter what the project is, band or solo artists, which are completely different productions for me and thought processes, there's still that common denominator is that let's learn each other's music habits and loves and hates, more loves than anything.
Yeah.
Then when I get to the vocal stage, like they already are relaxed. And then again, I agree with Karen. Like I'll do like 3 to 6 passes of just let them, and then stop and do a bunch more. And then I got that, and I can find the genius little things that I might miss when I do cycle recording stuff parts. But for me, I guess what I would say that do you guys agree that I was thinking like, at the end of the day, it doesn't say produced by Karen Kozowski with an asterisk saying, except because this and this, and the manager thought this. I'm finding there's a lot of words coming at me from people that don't do what we're doing. And it's hard enough to deal with the artist on that. But when you have, how do you guys deal with notes and mixes and mixed notes and production notes after you've done all this hard work and it's coming from people that shouldn't be opening their a mouth? How do you guys deal with that?
Oh, it's easy. You just, when you're mixing something, you make sure that there's a Pultec on the end of the producer's table that's not even plugged in. And when they want the vocal to be a little bit brighter or louder, you say, yeah, go ahead, turn that knob until you're happy. And then they turn that knob and they say, right there, Darius, that's where the vocal's got to be. And I'm like, perfect.
But they're not
the assistant to recall that Pultec and you're good.
We used to be able to do that, but now I'm getting notes. So not that my notes are completely horrible that I get, but there are some times you just kind of go, really? Like, did you listen to this shit before I produced you? Like, have you heard it? Go back and listen. What are we talking about here? Like, how do you guys, like, how hardcore are you on pushing back on notes that are?
One of the most important things about notes is a couple of things. Number one, it's making sure that you have the conversation with the band, the A&R, and the management, that it's their responsibility collectively to get together to have one set of notes that come to me.
Yeah.
Because really what that does is you find that in their little group of fighting, they get rid of most of the really not relevant things, and they sort of work it out themselves. So then when that, set of notes comes to me, more times than not, it's been, weeded out to where it actually makes a little bit more sense. Because, granted, I have heard some doozies over the years. One of my favorite being can you turn the snappy thing up in the middle? Turn the snappy thing up.
Sure.
And I'm like, okay, what the hell is this?
Turn them all up, all the snappies.
Right. And that actually was the snare.
Yeah.
So
Would have never thought.
Been there, done that, heard them all. It's like, it's all good. But I think it's important to, it is important for us to, as we have had throughout, our discussions here, the importance of listening and hearing, because the truth is that all of us here on this panel have enjoyed a certain measure of success, but that does not make us flawless.
Right.
And it does not make us, impervious to like, oops, I forgot that. It's like, and it's important. I think it's really important for us to listen and be aware of that.
Hey, can I bring up something that I think is really important? I used to love when we had old days on when we had multi-track. We'd have that 3 minutes of rewind time when the artist was doing a vocal. And I really got to enjoy that, talking to them and talking about the phrasing they did in here and giving them confidence and trying to build up the momentum where we're going. And then Pro Tools came along, and I'm usually not engineering. And so the engineer would tend to just hit the space bar, And I have to reach over and grab him and say, basically, you touch that fucking space bar. Let me talk to the artist, right? Right.
Hey, Eric, 70
everybody,
jar.
okay. So So I just encourage everybody that out there just to let your artists communicate with, just rather than hitting the space bar without, unless you decided that's what you're going to do, just space bar, space bar, space bar, if you're doing vocals.
Very true.
If you said that.
Sometimes the artist would actually yell at me because I was, talking between, but you got to understand, you're absolutely right. But part of it is to give the artist a moment to digest and rest their throat. It's like, because if you're being too quick on it, sometimes you can actually kill the vibe as opposed to letting them process a little bit. Sorry, for the Canadians, process the idea a little bit better. And, that's one thing I learned, right away with Pro Tools is say, okay, we need to slow the pace down a little bit.
So let's jump into another segment here that's kind of part of that too. So something that I know Jeff's big on. Let's talk about turn downs. And it might have been mid project. Is there anything that's just, you realized it wasn't going to work, or someone sent you their stuff and you're just like, I can't do this, go see so-and-so instead or something? Is there, Eric, let's start with you.
Yeah, it happens. Like either it's a scheduling thing or I listen to something, I just realize the artist isn't ready to record yet.
Right.
It's, I think up to them at that point, whether or not they want to go seek someone else or hear what I have to say about what they brought me or sent me. So.
Yeah, I know you want to jump on that.
No, not really. I do my fair bit of turn downs, as all of us here probably do. I don't want to make any enemies, so I just kind of, at least either I'm too busy or my manager says that we're too busy, but we're still there to give advice, and we try to encourage them, maybe you should do this and that. So I certainly don't know everything. I have to operate on, I've got artists that some people would pass on, but there was something unique about it that I thought, and so I'll move forward with it. But no, there wasn't really anything negative about it. It was just I wanted to see what people's attitude was towards that. I think that's what I had asked.
Never anything negative. It's all positive. D, what about you?
Yeah, I've been in that situation several times where you have artists that, like Eric's saying, they're just not ready. And so you look at the price ticket of even recording at a studio, forget production. You realize that they can't really play their stuff. They haven't honed their craft. They haven't done those things that musicians or artists do to get prepared for something like even spending $1,000 a day at a studio. It's kind of like, guys, you're just not ready for this. Like, and it's, I think for me, that's a rejection based on my own guilt. I would feel like a sleazebag taking their money and recording them over a week, a month, when they really need much more development. And so there's a lot of things that you can do. Like you can help develop them. You can tell them like, this is going to be hard, or you can send them to, I've done this, send them to, like I was once the young guy who was like dying to record everything, why don't you go record with my assistant on the weekend and see what it's like to record, to see the process. I come from a background where you're staff engineer and, somebody, your manager, the studio manager comes out and says, you're working with this band on Saturday. You don't have a choice. You're there, you're working, right? Nowadays, I am selective about who I work with, but I don't do the rejection thing. I do the pre-interview type of thing. Like, send me your stuff. I want to hear it, so on and so forth. It's not, I don't like the word rejection or turn down. It's not, for me, it's not that. It's about, can I bring something to this table? Maybe it's a scheduling thing, maybe it's something else, but it's not, for me, I have difficulty with that because I always try to find the best in something. Maybe that's my weakness, but I try to find it. So it's, but with that being said, once I'm in it, I'm in it to the end. I finish the project and take my lumps later on when I get a phone call from my buddies saying, "What the hell are you thinking, D?" So.
What about you, Bob?
There's sort of, I suppose, two different sort of thought process. I mean, I realized something over my years that you know, through either hubris or arrogance or whatever, more times than not, even if a band wasn't quite ready, I always felt that, you know, I could help them get to that promised land. So that, you know, I figured that that was always part of my responsibility, job as producer, was to help them with the songwriting, help them artistically, you know, help them grow. And I've always felt so much of my thing was, you know, as we all do in this job, is help teach. It's the learning curve, you know. It's like, it's about the band who doesn't really know what they're doing when they start out, but if you know, if we do our job right, we're helping teaching them as we go along. And then there's the turn downs where it's just like, nah, I don't like it, you know. It's like, but I'll tell you a couple of my biggest, you know, fails, and that one was, one of them was, I turned down the Chad Kroeger, the second Nickelback record, the one with How You Remind Me. I was,
Ouch.
yeah, no, trust me, because I was friends with their manager, and he was like, you know, but in my defense though, Chad hadn't yet written How You Remind Me. So basically I went and saw them play live, and we talked a little bit, and part of the problem, I had just come off a Saliva record, and I was like, you know what? I just don't want to make another kind of just rock record at that moment. So I passed on that, and that was like kind of stupid. But hey, you know what? You live, you learn. And probably the biggest faux pas in turning a record down was the aforementioned first Tracy Chapman record, because I was sort of partnered up with David Kirschenbaum, who was the named producer on that record, and I was co-producing a lot of records with him at the time. But I got called by Carlos Santana and Greg Raleigh and Neil Sean. They were reuniting, you know, Santana for a reunion record, and they called me to come up to San Francisco and do that record. And so I told David, like, sorry buddy, I gotta go up and do this record, you know. I mean, this is, to me, because I love Santana when I was a kid. I love Greg Raleigh, and I love that B3 sound was, you know, just so influential for me. But anywho, so I passed on the, you know, points of Tracy Chapman, and there you go. The rest is history. So
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have met me though. Honey.
Yeah, actually, my wife's sitting back here, and she just said, yeah, but then you probably wouldn't have met me. And I was like, so there you go. So it all worked out for the good.
Ken, you probably, I mean, I'll just get both you guys there. Ken, I don't know when you have to leave, so I want to make sure I've got you in there. Have you had anything, I mean, over the years that you must get a lot, like Bob, you must get a ton go through for American artists. Is this something you just had to turn down, or you just couldn't do?
Sure. I mean, I think I turned down Kenny Loggins and that company. Who was it? No, that wasn't it. But anyway, two things that I was just so tired from just doing 12 months of a record. I just said, I don't care. I can't do it at all.
Right.
Wow.
It happens.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like your wife said, you know, like, you know, might not, you don't know what you, how fate changed.
Yeah.
So you're here now. That's good.
It's true.
So back on that for 1 second, on the Santana stuff, was Graham Lear playing drums on that, Bob?
No, well, what had happened was here's the sort of sad part of that story was, so I go up to San Fran, we're working away, we're writing, it's Greg, Neil, Sean, Carlos, we're just starting to write the record, and we're probably 2 weeks in, and Carlos just decides not to show up anymore.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, it's kind of hard to do a Santana reunion record without Carlos, right? So, so he stopped showing up. But again, though, that's, the beauty of what we do is that, then Neil Sean asked me, he said, hey, are you interested in staying up here and doing my solo record?
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, sure, okay, And so I ended up doing his solo record, but I would fly back to LA now and again to work on Tracy Chapman's record. So it was just sort of back and forth on that. But so, yeah, that's the beauty. And then from Neil, that led into working with the Jury guys on the 2 records they did with a band called The Storm, which was a, sort of kind of a collective of some of the Journey dudes. So that's I think I've said this a million times that honestly, almost always the key to, success in this business is just say yes.
Right.
Just do it. Just go do it. Whatever, you'll figure it out. It's all good. And then if you're lucky, you get to a point where you can't say yes to everything anymore. And, then all of a sudden you're in a better position. But, my whole career started out with just, I'm not kidding. Everything that I was asked to do, I was just, sure, I'll figure it out,
Right. Graham Lear, though, I was going to say, if you ever did record him through anything he was part of, he's a London boy. So we have him.
Oh, cool.
Yes. So he's a.
See, I'm learning so much about London now. It's great,
For you. London, Canada. That's what it says on our sign.
Right. I didn't know that Garth was from London. That's cool.
They went to school here, yeah, for sure. Born in Toronto, but they were here in London, yeah.
Right.
So when it comes to the question, there's a couple questions over there. I'll leave them just as we get into those segments specifically. But back to that question we were talking about. So anybody else want to say anything about the turn downs or stuff that just you knew wasn't going to work for whatever reason? No?
I would just say from the artist perspective, but particularly to not so much the creativity, but the engineering. I have received requests from artists, and I think that sometimes you can tell from the perspective of engineering that it wouldn't match, I would say, my standard of engineering. And I've had to, and for creative reasons, those are other reasons that you turn it down. Maybe you don't like the song or the messaging, or you don't think that the artist is ready. But I've also heard decent records that are just mixed pretty badly, and this is their final version, and they hope for you to add your verse, and there's no clear intention necessarily of them taking it to a professional. For me, if the record isn't going to sound a certain standard once it comes out, at this point in my career, I would probably have to say no based on that. I might not communicate to the artist that's the reason. I might just be too busy. But even if the song is good enough, but the music video is going to be a webcam recording or something, there's just I think a certain standard that I feel like I adhere to in my own artistry. So I have, from the artist perspective, had to turn down projects because maybe the budget doesn't allocate for proper engineering, or it's just not a priority for the musician, or they don't know. But yeah, I've definitely had to say no for that reason as well.
That's very important. I really like that you piped up on that, because as an independent and as with everyone, we have 7 different people of 7 different backgrounds here. So what you said is very important too, not only just on the artist side, But I mean, yeah, there's people that's probably approaching you every day in Brampton or Toronto that you knew, you grew up with, going, "Hey, want to be part of my this or that or whatever?" And you gotta nicely say, "Well, I just can't do it right at the moment because it might not be in the best interest of whatever, either them or you at that point, right?" So I'm glad you piped up on that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's a question here. I'm going to roll into that too with you because it's kind of geared towards Haviah and Karen. So someone wants to put you guys on the spot here. Mario wants to put you on the spot. So locally, we've seen some cross collabs between hip hop and country. We had Casper here in rap, and we had Julia Haggerty in country. Karen, you've become a country hit machine. Could you work with Haviah? Haviah, would you take a chance like that? Rap.
Yeah.
See that? I would like to hear that.
Yeah. Totally.
That'd be kind of cool, though.
Like, would
Yeah,
I
Nick-
take a chance with that? Absolutely. I think that, I mean, you always start with, I think it was Darius saying kind of like the interview process. It's just like, I'd love to hear your work, and please listen to my work. I think it's very important to be collaborative. I don't think that if somebody specializes in a genre that they can't do other genres. And I definitely don't think, like, as somebody that does hip hop, I sing, I rap mostly. It's a lot of vocal engineering. So if there are live musical instruments, it's usually not the foundation of the record. So I think it sometimes is easier for engineers that specialize in other genres to kind of be able to navigate the genre that I do, because sometimes there's just less difficult or technical engineering involved. That's not always the case, but I feel like if the records that they're doing in other genres, like if I listened to your records and they were country records and I like the way they sounded, that for me would be like, okay, I know that I'm doing a lot of production. I know that as long as we have that conversation, if you're collaborative and you're willing to have me also have input on the song, I definitely don't think that that would be a setback. The engineer that I work with, I don't think that he like mainly does hip hop, and I kind of go back to him for repeat projects. So yeah, I would definitely take that chance. I don't know if it would be taking a chance, but I would try it.
Well, the three here, Darius, you worked with Cardinal Offishell. You worked with, you've done a lot. You've done everything from rock side, from Wide Mouth Mason all the way to the other side too. So
Yeah.
It's a cross genre that's probably critiqued a lot of things that you're doing.
Music is music, sound is sound. I don't really hear a difference between hip hop and death metal. There's a lot of crossover and a lot of similarities. You know, once a musician, always a musician. That's what I live and breathe. It's kind of like, it's no fair to say just because you're mixing a death metal record that you can't just sit there and go work on something hip hop tomorrow. It's that for me is a joke. I mean, like, look at all the genres and genres and genres and genres of music have been developed simply because you end up with two unrelated pieces of music coming together and say, oh, I mean, we have such a weird soup of music right now. I predict that in, the next generation of music, people will be not saying, what are you into? They'll be like, what are you into? They got, I'm into music. Dude, I'm into music too. It's like, it's one big amalgamated mush. It's like oatmeal now. There's no such thing as hip hop and rock anymore. There's this thing like country music a decade ago was just kind of like very skinny bass drums, thin bass, big vocals. Now it's hip hop with like banjos.
I wasn't going to say it. You say it. Yeah.
I'm just saying, no, I'm saying there's nothing wrong with it. I think that people who are specializing, I think people who are throwing their nose up at certain genres of music are not willing to collaborate. I think are closed-minded, man. They're like walking around like this. Music is music, sound is sound. Musicians make music. We make sound.
So go ahead. You want to add to that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I got to head off to the airport now.
Okay.
Meet you, Ken. Good luck.
It's been an honor.
Yes.
Awesome.
And good luck with finding the name for your studio.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We'll be in this week, my friend.
Take care, guys. See you next time in Canada.
Hey,
Nice meeting you.
All right. Bye-bye. Nice work.
Thank you. Really nice to have Ken involved, obviously, with that and with the keynote too. It's been awesome to have both sides of that. Right from Haviah here in Toronto doing some great things as a young artist, all the way to Ken, and Bob, I'm not sure how old you are, but I mean,
I'm
still.
old.
Well, 72. I was born in 1970. So if you were
No,
making records in 72, man,
I was
Right?
I was actually what year? I was born in 1955. Yeah,
whoa,
I'm going to be 65 years old here in a couple months. So, but
congratulations.
in honor of this whole thing, I dyed my beard today. So,
Right.
you know,
You look fantastic.
That's great, buddy.
yeah. But the problem is that when I say, you know, oh yeah, I'm going to be 65, and it's like, wait a second, it can't be jet black at 65. So, but the problem is I just don't. When I let it go and don't dye it for a while, then I realize I don't feel like that. You know, I honestly, I feel like I'm still in my 20s. I still love making music, you know, so much. And it just, and I'm, you know, I'm so blessed that I get to work with really fun, cool young artists that keep me young. I mean, that's part of the process. And my young, beautiful wife back here. So, and she told me to say that, by the way. So.
Obviously, it's a pleasure to have such an array of widespread from here, and Canadian and American too. Because I mean, when we're talking about some great Canadian things here, like Karen's done, and Jeff's done, and Darius has done, Haviah, we got some American artists. So he's talking about dropping Kenny Loggins. Jeff's talking about, I'm just not sure if I can do this, you know, washboard union this time, and Karen's probably going to do it, or vice versa, or something like that. A lot of the Canadian stuff, you probably don't even know what we're talking about, but these are all artists that Canada has a huge countryside. Ken was talking about that the other day, but I wanted to touch base with Ken before. 1 second here. I wanted to touch base with Ken about the next question. If you guys have seen that pop up there, but sorry, someone just said something. Was it you, D?
No.
Jeff, did I cut you off?
Nope.
Someone's. So where we're going to go to the next segment, kind of maybe into the last, we'll see how far we get here. We got a couple questions. If there's anybody else who wants to get questions, then please do it now, just so I've got it on my board here so I can keep it organized as we get to the next little segments. This one here, I really would have wished that Ken was here, but it's okay because it does mention Fleetwood Mac. But Megan says, the question for those who have been doing this for years, how do you feel about the way things have evolved in the recording producing process? Has it ever changed? For example, with a band like Fleetwood Mac being a newer band back in the day, the amount of say the artist had versus today. Do you or the artist have less say? Is there more of a business approach when recording? We touched a little bit on that already, but this is a loaded question.
Yeah, it is.
Because Leslie Buckingham, we know we got into that with the keynote the other day. We're going from Leslie Buckingham back in the late 70s, basically letting everything happen and being and with Richard and with Ken, and then the next album he became a monster, and those were all how it works. We get down to the point right now where even Haviah, with what we're talking now, says, you know, she wants kind of that. She wants to have that. She wants Ken to be that, or the producer to be that person with her, to give her the insight, or the engineer to give her the insight on that type of stuff. So that's a loaded question. And who wants to start that? Because I will take it.
I could say something about it, like in the trenches kind of thing during, because the question is about technology kind of in the recording process. I remember I'm going to not talk about band names, so I'll just say a band that I was doing some stuff with at Sony. I was, like I said earlier, like, and in terms of programming music, like I'm like I was using an Atari laptop with racks of samplers and pulling off multi-tracks. It was like the fucking Matrix, whatever. So I remember at the time I was working on some stuff, and the band was standing around the computer going, so the strings are in the computer? Like they couldn't really understand it. And later when Zoolander came out, when they go, the files are in the computer, I was laughing out loud because like I actually witnessed that. So fast forward, like that technology I could see it bite these artists that were all very successful. And individually other bands that would go out and they would get all this new gear. And there was a time where I actually noticed that the influx of the technology, everybody wanted to use it. Their creativity and their writing suffered.
Right.
I remember having to have the discussion with a few artists, like, put the computer away. It's just a tool later. Go back and sit at the piano or whatever you do, guitar, and get back to writing songs. And it really was an issue for us at Sony. And I get it, because you get so entrenched into the gear, and it's like you kind of forget. And I started seeing it in co-writes where it's like, no, I'm not going to put up a beat. I'm not going to put up music. We're going to write a song, and then I'm going to produce a demo or not. And so technology, I think the process has changed, that people are trying to get to the finish line quicker than they should.
Mhm.
There's my final answer.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I find that technology is starting us at the finish line. I think to add to this, like, those of us who are working on anything urban hip hop, pop these days, it's usually already, the song has already been so polished by somebody with a laptop using Ableton that the song isn't there yet. They're starting with the final production, and the song hasn't been crafted. Like, it's, if you were to hear that song, one of the people that mentored me when I was young said that if the song sounds good with the vocal a cappella or vocal acoustic or vocal piano, then it's a good song. It stands up by itself, right? So a good song is a good song without the production. Fast forward to 2020, and people are starting with production and then trying to find a song.
Mm-hmm.
Can I actually, let me just
difficult.
interject with that. So again, I'm not talking about bands. And so what now to mitigate those disasters? I do experiments on companies, and it's like, all right, I want all those songs that you think are going to be part of the selective process for singles. Let's get the artist to do acoustic and a vocal. Done. Then when I go into the boardroom with this, I'll say the suits, and I don't mean that in any way.
Yeah.
Every time I do that, the entire room picks the same 3 songs. I've been in the situation where we play the demos of, like, somebody's done this one, somebody's done that one. It's like nobody can actually agree on choices. And a lot of the times they'll pick songs that sound amazing, but the song is garbage.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm starting. It's starting to run away a little bit.
Yeah.
I can piss people off. My artist is like, I don't care. Like, if I get a pitch from Nashville, I'm like, well, I'm not going to say yes until I hear you do that acoustic and vocal. So I want to hear that. I want to see what you bring to it, not what.
I would interject this, because it's a little tough simply because of the evolution of technology, and more importantly, the evolution of how we artistically build houses. What I would say is, like, when you say, oh, you got to go sit at the piano, and it's like, but to a kid nowadays, and sorry to sound old, but that's what the technology is that piano. It's kind of the same thing, because whatever, listen, songwriting to me is really, it's whether or not you got a great hook, whether or not you got a great groove, it's like, it's all of the above. So I guess I'm less purist. I've never really been a super purist about any of this stuff, other than, wow, that's really good, or that's okay. So I feel like the technology in the right hands is the equivalent, there's an equivalency there.
I think it's about, like, finding the sweet spot so that it can be an aid to maybe opening up a window to a sound or a type of song or a vibe that wouldn't have happened if when you were writing the song it was around a guitar. I mean, I get, like, artists coming in who really expect to hear a track to write to. And then I have artists coming in who want to start from complete scratch, and they don't care about whether I'm making a track at all during the session, which is great, because I do like focusing on the song. But then I have just pro writers coming in who are just so sick of hearing just a guitar and they want to be pushed in different directions with sounds that they aren't used to hearing, because it opens their mind up to like whole other worlds. So yeah, I think it's just finding a way to make it all work and not lose sight of having a great song.
You're so right, because really what it's about is everybody has their own process of how they get to the finish line. Because you're absolutely right about that. I mean, some artists, until it's just like, wow, that sounds amazing, that's the thing that pushes them, for the melody line that all of a sudden, oh my God, they would have never got that amazing melody line, that amazing hook, had it not been in place, So, yeah. But again, though, this is all goes back to my theory about all of this. Whatever it takes. Right. It doesn't matter how we get there, just so long as we do. And I always say that to, every artist, it's like, dude, I don't care how we get there, so long as we do.
I was going to say, to clarify what I meant was, I prefer if my artists do stuff on their own on GarageBand or whatever. So it's another way to communicate. But I think we can all agree that the filter system might be a little bit broken these days at the label levels, potentially. And I'll give you an exact, no bands. I got a demo, a bunch of songs we had to choose from for a single, and nobody chose the single. And I'm going, this is an amazing hook. It's a great song. The demo was fucking awful, like to the point where it was destroying the song. And I fought with the label and the band, and they're like, look, just demo it up this way for me. And we did it, and they were like, oh, okay, I get it. And it was literally their fastest top 10 hit. It's not like I had magic ears. I'm like, but the demo was so horrible, it really did almost affect their entire career moving forward. That's all I'm getting at. So
sure.
I promote my artists to work it up and let me hear what you're thinking, but that's between us. Like, don't. Yeah. So my advice to be any songwriters, if you're going to Nashville or anywhere in New York or LA, let whoever it is you're working with, if they want to produce up a demo, that's great. Make sure you have a vocal and a piano or a vocal and a guitar in your back pocket, and be very wary of who you're sending stuff to. Like that's
been the truth, from the beginning of record labels. No. It's like, it's our job to make sure that they hear it, that they get it. It's not, their job isn't necessarily to sift through the weeds to figure it out. That's our job. Our job is to facilitate that and make it happen, so they go, that's the one,
Well, that's the way it used to be. Now it's like we have people that are hearing fully mastered, finished demos, which aren't bad, but some of them are terrible. Some of them are terrifying for me because they're amazing. But that's not, well, then just put that out. It gets to that point. It's like,
yeah, but that's what's happening now in a lot of instances, is that, hey, why is it that, you had to do an old school process to get to that? Because that, to me, is actually a really interesting thing. It's nowadays, it doesn't matter so long as it works to, release it, get it out there. If it's badass, people are going to dig it. They either dig it or they don't dig it. So
here's to follow that up. So for everybody on this panel, I'm sure everybody understands demoitis.
Oh yeah.
What do you guys do to get over that? Eric, what do you do? Like,
I actually haven't had really a problem with demoitis. I don't know. It's the odd things come across. Like, it's mostly like a performance thing. Like, I just love the way I did that solo, or I love the way I sang that, or So I don't know. It's usually I don't know. It's that's tough. Like, yeah, some people get demoitis on things, but I think at the end of the day, as long as you're beating the demo, and I agree with Bob, like, it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you get there, So If you spend time chasing, or if someone has demoitis on something, maybe go and investigate the demo, see what they like about it. Maybe take things from the demo. I've used stuff from the demos before and in the actual tracks, and
Sure.
it's worked out fine. You know,
nothing wrong with that.
It's made whoever loved that keyboard line on the demo or that guitar part on the demo, it's made them happy, and they can now go out and be confident about this song that we've done. So it's not, yeah, I don't know, chasing demos, sometimes a little bit, not a waste of time, but I think if someone's really adamant about it, at least investigate it and maybe take what they like or try and recreate what they like about it. And I'm sure that solve any demoitis issues. Has for me anyway.
Got a couple of questions here. Karen, you gonna say something?
Yeah, there's also a certain magic that sometimes happens on a demo that you lose when you go and try to recut it. And I mean, there's everything under the sun happening right now. Like I've made fully fleshed out, fully produced demos, and then had the artist go to another producer and recut that same arrangement. Because maybe that producer was doing their whole record, you know, and whatever, it made sense. Sometimes those producers have brought me in on it and we've done a co-production and they'll use my tracks and just build on that. Or I've also had complete like demos that I did as a demo, bang, the label just wanted to release it as it is. Like they were like, no, don't touch it. Which is like a kind of a dream when that happens in a way. And then you're also like, well, might have done some of these things differently. So, you know, you're always like, as a writer producer, especially, like I'm doing a lot of demos and I know that any of the stuff that I'm doing could end up in the final. I'm always treating it like I'm building the master already. But there's also this catch-22 because, you know, like Jeff said, like sometimes in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, I'm writing with this artist and we're building something and that's great. And I know we know the direction we're going and whatever. But sometimes, you know, I'm writing with all sorts of artists and they may be working with their own producers and but the label and the management still want to hear a demo. They want to hear it spelled out for them. And that's just then me and the artist and sometimes just me in some cases, like spending an extra 15 hours on it after the write, making it into something that I think sounds really cool. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, I hope they all like this direction and then I'm not just producing it off the record, you know? Like if it's just slightly different than what everything else they're getting, you know, they may just feel like it doesn't fit, but it could be done in that other way. It's just, you know, so it's just this catch-22 right now. We're in a weird landscape.
Yeah. That's what I was getting at. I'm like, it's not, I'll just say that everybody on this panel with the tools today is going to make unbelievable fucking demos. And I would have a problem with that. I'm talking about because the technology is available, there's going to be a lot more shitty demos that come to our, like, you need to make that a hit now. Okay. Well, and then they fight you on something they've been hearing for an entire year over and over and over. And you all know it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Those are some things I'm starting to get a little more of these days. And it's like, I have to play the bad guy and go, well, that's what I was getting at.
Can I go back 1 second? One of the things that I forgot to mention, and I think it's kind of important, when we were getting back and talking about the difference of, you know, the evolution of technology and all this stuff, one of the single biggest things that changed is the process of musicians interacting with each other. Back in the day, there was no choice, but the band would rehearse, you'd work on the song, you'd do pre-production, they would go in, you would track, and there you go. You'd still do all your overdubs and stuff like that, but you went in and tracked with a band. I haven't tracked an entire band in probably, actually that's not true. The last one was Airborne because they could only play when they were together. But for I would say at least 10 years or more, it's been, with the exception of Airborne, is the last time I actually tracked an entire band in the room where we put up mics and kept the performances.
Nice.
It's that, I mean, and sorry to go off track here, but I just sort of, that's one of those things that I think has really, really changed. And partly because players today, they're great players, but they have a different view of how you play. It's about playing to the click track or playing to something versus playing in a band together. Sorry.
It's fine. I got to get to one question here, and then we're going to sort of wrap everything around here for sure, so that we're done before 3 o'clock for sure. There's another segment starting. So Aaron Allen, of course, is on with us here too. Aaron Allen's a fantastic country artist from this area here. Country Music Artist of the Year from the Forest City London Music Awards, of course. Congratulations, Aaron Allen.
He's okay. Whatever.
Works with Jeff. There's no insider there at all. Anyway, Aaron says plenty of artists are not into co-writing. How important is it for an artist to know where their strengths lie, or to be open to working with others from the first word to the end product? I want to give this to Karen and Haviah. Karen, if you want to start.
Well, it's probably different for every artist, because every artist has different strengths. But I think that collaborating most times can create something stronger, being open to collaboration. Even if you look at, where all the music starts from, which is the song and the writing process, some artists write only by themselves. And a small percentage of that is fucking brilliant. And then, yeah. So I don't want to take anything away from those savants, but there's also the fact that co-writing, especially being here in Nashville, it's such a integral part of the scene here, where, co-writing inevitably makes something more universal and makes it something that more people can relate to, because you're combining viewpoints and you're bringing people together on something. So if you're trying to make something that connects with the world, you may have a better chance if you are open to collaboration, because you're bringing in other viewpoints, other talents, other input, and it can hopefully bring it to a place where it's even more commercially successful,
Haviah.
Yeah, the latter half of the question was, how important is it for artists to know their weaknesses? I think that is an extremely important thing for an artist to know, because self-sabotage is very real. And I've done the DIY thing for quite a long time, and that's why I know that I'm not the engineer, is because I just know where I would like my music to get sound-wise, and knowing a little bit about what those steps are, but knowing that I'm not the expert allows me to hire the expert. So I think it's really important to know what those weaknesses are. Specific to co-writing, I think it applies the same way. I don't do as much co-writing as I think I would like to in my career. COVID definitely did not set me up for success in 2020. A lot of my new music is a lot less people involved than my last project. However, I do think that co-writing, like you said, Karen, is a really great way to get different perspectives and to connect with possibly a broader audience. It's just, what is the messaging of the song? What is the feel of the song? And is the person or people that you're bringing in to co-write with, can they add to kind of that thematic vibe, or do they take away? Because a lot of people also write in different vibes. I do hip hop, so I don't do co-writes with my verses, and I don't have a ghostwriter or anything like that. So it can get a bit weird, what song am I co-writing on? There's some songs I wouldn't really co-write on, but maybe the chorus I would, but not so much what I'm saying in a verse. But I do know that there are some artists or rappers that have their verses written for them. So it just depends on, when it comes specific to rap, it's a bit of a weird question, because when it comes to verses, I just really don't entertain that very much. But the element where you're connecting the most with that broad audience is usually your chorus, your bridge, your hook. So that's something I definitely want to explore more, but I do think it is important to be willing and open to co-writing. Otherwise, it does just keep it very much in your palette, what you think works, and that often doesn't work if you're only asking yourself, does this work? You know?
Yeah, and I think that applies to production and as well. I mean, it's sort of like, I kind of brought it back to co-writing just because that's where everything starts. But I think it's a parallel. Like it's choosing the right producer. It's choosing someone whose vision meshes with yours and feels like it's going to be the right chemistry. I mean, it's like that at every level. It's picking, if you're hiring musicians, who's the right drummer for the project, who's the right guitarist, you know, who's assembling the right team, you know.
Absolutely.
Can I add to that? Like, everybody on this panel as a producer can agree with this. I'm sure, is that collaborating with a good producer and pick wisely, obviously, and be open to collab. Is that Karen, me, Eric, we all have 1,000 mistakes that were repeated twice, and so it's like at the very least, the artist is going to go, I'm going to put my hand on the stove. I go, dude, I've tried that like 4 times already. It never works. And so it's a lot of my failures are what makes it a good choice to work with me, because I know how to steer you away from the shit I've already fucked up 20 times. Do you agree, Eric? Anybody? Anyone?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I think that,
you know, I think at the end of the day too, we also got to realize it's just a whole, like with co-writing, production, everything, it's opinions, man. Like your co-writer has the opinion on your original idea. The engineer has the opinion on what the artist and the producer direct, the way they direct them towards it, how they want it to sound. The mixer has his opinion on where the levels in the EQ should be. The mastering guy has his opinion on the loudness. It's whether or not you like these opinions or not as an artist, right? And as a producer collaborating with an engineer or an artist. So
Absolutely. That's a really good point as well. Just it being opinions, like that's a big thing. And for a lot of musicians and artists, it's difficult to like have this thing that you were vulnerable to create. And then all these opinions from different perspectives come in. Like I definitely learned over the years that they're for the better good of the record. And when you can separate it from like what you think the song should be versus like other people with their expertise kind of helping you with the song, it's easier to like let go of your personal opinion of people discrediting your work and just understanding, okay, this opinion is coming from someone who is an expert in this world. I don't know that stuff. And then like try to change. Like I'm doing a lot of the work that I'm doing right now. I'm getting opinions from my DJ, my choreographer, my makeup artist, my manager, just everyone that's kind of in my immediate team. And a lot of those people are not musicians. They don't necessarily have the ear, and they don't necessarily know how to communicate what they do or don't like. But I think it's important for those people's opinions as well to be considered because they are the listener as well. So yeah, I just think that's a really important thing. Those opinions, they do matter.
Absolutely.
We've got to wrap up in about a few minutes here because there's another segment starting at 3 o'clock Eastern. But I do want to answer Megan's questions there. She technically, her question way back really wasn't about technology. It was more sort of stuff, the topics that we kind of touched on a little bit, but it was about how the artists, the recording process with the artist, your relationship with the artist, whether or not they have a lot to say or whether or not you basically become, it's a business approach, right? So, which we kind of touched on that already, but then she's kind of added to it to further my question, what about when you have something, a song, and you have it finished and someone like the A&R thinks that it needs to be in a different direction, for instance, because of the drums and stuff. So Eric, I'm going to go to you there on this one. So for instance, if you're doing the Arkells, for instance, like a band's or whatever like that, there's specific stuff that you're probably have in your mind that the A&R wants to hear. And like, for instance, the radio pluggers and stuff like that, there's a certain sound. Is there a certain sound that when you're approaching stuff for radio or things like that? It's kind of quick.
Yeah, to a certain degree. I generally like to let things happen organically, but yeah, there's, obviously you have to know your audience and you have to know who it's for and stuff like that. And and I'm hoping that they're coming to me because they like my opinion on maybe the way the direction of their music should be. But yeah, you know, there's a bunch of things that come into play with that. But yeah, there's you know, you just have to have a big picture and just follow it. And you know, if you're producing something for a metal label, you're probably not going to want to make it too light sounding or pop sounding. You know, you probably want to sort of stick to the genre. You know, you can take risks and do things that maybe are a little bit outside the box, but I think just in general, you got to know your market and your audience and who you're doing it for.
Awesome. We're going to wrap up because Jeff and Darius, you were on another segment at 3 o'clock here off for the Forest City London Music Awards, which people can tune into on Zoom. Anybody it's in the audience right now, if you want to get on another one called The Pandemic Producer, it'll be talking about, of course, the things that I don't like to talk about, which is COVID and what things that people are doing right now when they're stuck at home. Bob, you have something you're going to pipe up and say, or are you just going to chirp? Is it like, nah.
I'm not that interesting, you know.
Yeah. We could talk for hours here. I think I've got, and Jeff, I've really got to learn a lot about you about this type of stuff, and you've got a lot to say. So I hope you end up doing some more things on your own for producer stuff. So because you're really wild when it comes to the chats. Is that your wife?
No, that's me. That's when I was in the early version of Quiet Riot. It's kind of hard to see, but it's like that skinny. When you were talking about, did we want to be rock stars? Yeah.
We can
yeah,
talk.
When I was a kid, I didn't even know what a producer was when I was making, you know, my first stuff. And then all of a sudden, you know, once I got into the studio, I'm like, oh my God, this is where I belong. So.
And thank you for that, Bob, because you've done some amazing things. I know I've got a ton of your records, so thank you for that.
And thank you for making me money. I'm very grateful for that. Now I can sit back as an old man and collect royalties and, you know, hang out. So it's all good.
We could talk for hours about all the great things. I had a whole bunch more lists of stuff to talk with everybody about, but it's been a blast. It's gone so quick. And with having 7 great personalities on here has been fantastic too, because everybody's been able to chime in and pipe up, and I haven't had to pull anybody along, which is great. So Haviah, thank you very much. We never touched the base on your great success with Champion and you and Book and all that stuff. Congratulations on everything you're doing.
Thank you.
And I'm going to hopefully talk with you more. I'd love to keep in touch with everybody. Some of you already know quite well. Bob, you and I have talked for over the years. And thank you for all the stuff with Rob Zombie. That's on my daily routine. But yeah, and Jeff, thanks very much. You need to be doing some producer stuff, man, during this whole pandemic stuff. You guys need to be doing some chats like this for people, because you got a lot to say, and I really love hearing it. And Rats, thanks very much.
Okay. Well, if anyone wants to know more, just sign up for my newsletter, erikrats.com. Shameless plug.
Eric,
That's awesome.
Miss you, Big Eric. Rats you.
Good seeing you guys. Bob, good meeting everyone.
Good to see you too.
Seeing everyone again.
So,
Pleasure.
As we wrap up, thank you very much, everyone, for being involved. Thank you very much to all the participants. I never even did the announcement because I was so pumped about getting started, and I had 7 great panelists with me. So this is the Soundcheck for Success from the Forest City London Music Awards Week, Producer, which is held every year, usually in a big auditorium with a lot of people. And these people will be sitting with us here in London and on our couches and having coffee and drinking and having a beer with us after. But now it is what it is. So thank you very much for that. We're going to sign off.
Will you invite me back next time so I can actually come there? Invite me back, so I want to show up there. So
that'd be really cool. And
the after parties are the best part.
My house with the Caesars. Hey, Darius.
Right, and pepperettes. Oh God. Yep.
3 o'clock, there's going to be another one. So if you want to sign up on Zoom, there's another Zoom chat that'll go out for that. You can get that off the Forest City London Music Awards.ca. Again, thank you very much to my panelists. Thank you very much all the people that put in for questions. There's so much I can go on and on and on about, but we have to stop. So we're going for hours with this whole thing. And then 8 p.m. tonight, myself personally, there is some other stuff that's going to go on. Obviously, the gala It's going to be at 7 o'clock again, I believe. 8 o'clock tonight, I'll be on with EMAC Recording Studios as we're going to celebrate the 40th anniversary here in London. Cranberries to even doing soundtracks with Up and doing a lot of the voiceovers with a lot of Pixar movies right here in London. You heard that, Bob? London's happening. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. We got to go.
Bye, guys.
Hey, thank you.
Bye.
Good to see everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jay Panaseco, our producer. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.